Good evening and welcome to Yahowah Radio. For those that are in the chat room, you know that I wanted to begin this program talking about fake news. I'm really very concerned. As I contemplated this, first thing I did is after being sent an article, and the article resonated. I mean, what the article said contained elements of that which I knew to be true, and it contained photographs that I had seen almost 20 years ago when I was with Ron Wyatt. But the article is written that the Archaeological Institute of Egypt announced yesterday that it had discovered a vast army of Egyptians had been drowned in the Red Sea. Sure, wanted to believe it. You know, more evidence. You know, it's kind of falls into your first blush is it falls into what Kirk is doing and finding this intersection between Yahweh's depiction of the plagues and the Exodus and what now is available to us through ancient documents. But it's not true. It's a fake story. And the reason it's so easy to believe the fake story is because there are so many fake news outlets these days that they all parrot what one another says. And the thing that was so irritating is I was going about trying to verify the story, just like when Kirk first presented that ancient papyrus that chronicles from a priest's point of view the same things that are presented in the Torah. Love Kirk to death. Trust Kirk. Know that Kirk's a thorough researcher that he clearly knows what Yahowah has said and has a filter to discard anything that's in conflict with it, and that he would do his homework. And but yet, doesn't matter how much I love Kirk, I don't trust Kirk as much as I trust Yahowah. And the last thing I want to do is to. Yeah, I didn't think that would bother me to say that. No, the last thing I wanted to do was to dent our credibility in any way. Yes. I mean, we already have issues with credibility because we are flawed individuals, and our message, which is Yahweh's message, is so radically different than the rest of humanity. The last thing we want to do is say something, promote something that can be shown to be not true, and destroy our credibility, which is only important. Because we're about it when it comes to telling Yahweh's story using his words. So our credibility is important, but only for that reason. If there were 1,000 people doing what we were doing and most better than what we were doing, then our credibility wouldn't matter. So it does. So I went and I checked, and I found the multiple credible verifications that the papyrus exists, that it's been translated, and that its translations are consistent with what Kirk had come up with. So I was trying to do that on this article on the Egyptian army being found under the Dead Sea, under the Red Sea, and a story coming out from the Egyptian Archaeological Services. And first of all, I knew that the Egyptian Archaeological Services would never post that, even if it were found. So that's how. Yeah,
they would kind of hide that one.
Oh,
that's a red flag right there.
Oh, of course. It's like if Saudi Arabia decided to promote what Ron Wyatt found in Arabia at Mount Horeb, as opposed to put a fence around it and put people in prison that try to go there. I'd be questioning it because it is so destructive to the message of Islam. So I brought up Google to do my search, and God damn it, on Google's homepage, there's this picture. The first person on the left is this little wimpy guy. He's in a wheelchair. I don't have a problem with the person in a wheelchair. You know, if you're going to present what is 8 people, you think that 1/8 of the world's population is in a wheelchair? Or are you doing that because you're trying to make a point? The last person is also a guy. Both crippled individuals are guys. and the last guy's got a cane. The second person is got the G in Google with the rainbow colors. Do you think he's representing the covenant?
Nope.
How about gay, lesbian, transgender, transvestite?
I get it. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, what percentage of Americans, most Americans, but even the world's population, what percentage of the world population is homosexual? You know, I know.
5% or something. I don't know.
No, 2%.
Yeah. I think it's
2%.
probably doubling now because of all the whatever.
Yeah. It was 1% of males, 1.5% of women. It's increased ever so slightly, mainly because of women. But 2% is the answer. So you're going to have 8 people on this. One's in a wheelchair. One's homosexual. So now you've got, what they're trying to do is normalize abnormal. The third person is this happy little Muslim woman. She's got the crescent moon and wearing a hijab, and she's got her arms over the shoulders of the gay fella and over a Jew that's got the Jewish woman that's got the Star of David. Now, how many Muslims do you know that embrace Jews?
Not many.
What does the Quran say about homosexuals, and what have Muslims done regarding homosexuals over the centuries?
You kill them.
Yeah, the same thing they've done to Jews, right? So to present this as a normal thing, that there's a happy Muslim woman as opposed to Muslim women have absolutely no rights. They're abused by Muslim men. They're raped. They're beaten. They're sexually mutilated. Oh, she's a happy little camper, and she's got one arm over the gay, which Muslims murder in mass. It's illegal to be homosexual in an Islamic country. Penalty is death.
Of course, there's a much higher percentage of homosexuality in Muslim countries, as you know.
There are.
Sure.
That's correct, because everything. If your entire, the foundation of your society is based on a perversion of truth, that's going to be the case, and it is. Now, the next thing is that you've got as I say, this Jewish woman, and rather than being jihadi and killed by the Muslim, no, she's embraced and just loved. Now, the next person, he is just a black face. The black face has got the symbol of woman and the symbol of man.
I think he's a transgender guy.
There we go. Now we've gone from gay to transgender. What percentage of the world's population do you think is transgender?
1/10 of 1%.
How about 1/1000th of 1%?
That I would believe. 1/1000.
Yeah.
Enough.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's the same. It's about the same percentage of Muslim women that are going to put their arms around a homosexual man and a Jewish woman. 1/100th of 1%, 1/1000th of 1%. The next person, of course, is the little Christian, and she is of course Caucasian, and she's sitting there with her little bobby socks on. Oh yeah, she's a little cutie, and right next to her you've got this person with an E and an equal sign after it. It's a very, very dark-faced individual. What does E mean? Environmentalist?
I think he's talking about equality. I'm thinking.
Oh, equality. Okay, so they want equality. The same way that the law schools that my son has been applying to want equality by making as their primary determination of qualifications the color of one's skin.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how you have equality if your primary determinant is to who gets in, regardless of qualification. If there's an entirely unequal standard, if your skin color is black, you tell me how that promotes equality.
Well, it doesn't. It promotes a political agenda, and it's about. That's it.
So
that's
is
what
the
it's
Google
about.
homepage?
I want to hire a lawyer and a doctor that make the best grades.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Is the Google homepage?
They'd all be Chinese. I mean, think about it.
Is the Google homepage?
Hey, I'm okay.
Promoting, is the Google homepage promoting multiculturalism and political correctness by making the abnormal appear normal, and groups that hate and kill one another appear to love one another? Is that not fake news?
Well, yeah, of course it's fake news. That's the whole coexist thing. It's the idea that multiculturalism works, and the truth of the matter is that multiculturalism just doesn't work. It's not that, and it's got nothing to do with skin
whether
color.
Whether it works or doesn't work, I don't care. What I care is God's opposed to it. That's all I care.
Right. It just straight up doesn't work. I mean, you got cultures. Look at London again. You got these.
What did God say to His children about the ways of the Gentiles? Accept them, embrace them, be multicultural.
No. He said the exact opposite. There it is.
So,
Don't do what these
whether or
idiots
not
do.
it's productive or not, and by the way, it's not. You're right, it's not. But that's really irrelevant from my point of view. God said, don't do it. That's relevant. His advice is really good. Now, I was having a conversation with my son the other day, and I said, that 70% of Christians believe that the earth is 6,000 years old. 70%. And he says, it can't even be 7%. There is no way. And so he looked it up and said, you're wrong. It's only 45% of Americans think that the earth is flat. It's not what I said, is it?
No.
I didn't say 45% of Americans thought the earth is flat. I said that 70% of Christians think the earth is 6,000 years old. Now, why don't you read down through that and see what they say about Christians? And he says, oh, my God. You're right. 70% of Christians have been persuaded by the false news, and there are so many sites promoting this, that the earth is 6,000 years old, that God created the illusion of dinosaurs just to trick man so that, he could play a game with us.
So those were an illusion now. Okay.
Well,
yeah,
I didn't know this.
God did it to trick.
God put us here to test our faith.
Yeah, I guess
really?
So.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
One of the fastest
when
growing
you get to heaven, he's going to give you a
our...
question. He's going to ask you if you believed in dinosaurs, and if you say you did, he's sending you straight to hell.
You're out of there.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You know what the fastest growing kind of alt-right myth is today?
What is
Flat
it?
Earth.
I don't know.
The flat Earth.
Yep.
Flat Earth. But
I've had a lot of people approach me with this nonsense, and I tell every one of them, Dee Powers did quite a bit of study on what they believe. She went into a group of them for a couple months and listened to them. Mm-hmm. Do you know they actually believe, because I asked, how come nobody's seen the edge of the earth, fell off into the abyss, they're just gone. Maybe that's where all the missing people are. I was laughing.
Yeah.
But no, they actually, what happens is if you take that step, where you're falling off the edge, you're magically transported to the other side by the time you finish your step. Did you know that?
Okay.
This is really the deal.
Magically.
Yeah. And some of this it's just magical. It's just magical.
Yeah, there's another myth that's really popular these days, that there's an unseen planet in our solar system, and that unseen planet is going to create great destruction.
Why?
Not true. Not true.
I mean, but why did that? I mean, I'm just saying. What's the point?
I'm going to bring up one that is. I think there's some people who still cling to this. Okay. But remember during the election when there was the Comet Pizza?
Oh, ping pong pizza.
Yeah.
And the pedophile ring.
Yeah.
I cling to that. I cling to it absolutely, 100%.
But
you know what's funny to me? I'll tell you what's funny to me, Craig. Nobody's investigated it.
Yeah, of course, because it's not.
You get the New York Times. Hey, they're just a little family pizza joint.
It's not.
Yeah, sure they are. Well, I believe it is. So there it is.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what the consequence of that is, because this stuff is really important to me.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's really important.
Go ahead. Okay.
Do I think that Bill Clinton has committed acts of pedophilia? Yeah, I think there's evidence to believe that he has. I can't prove it, of course, but there was enough of him being on that Lolita Express and the perversion.
23 trips to Lolita. That'll do it for you.
I have no issue with that. But the sex slaves on the whatever it was in the Caribbean someplace, and that pizza joint was the hub of coordinating it. Bullshit.
Oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't believe it's the hub of coordinating it.
Yeah.
I don't believe
pizzeria
that.
had absolutely nothing to do with it, and the story was deliberately made up. But here's the problem. Here's the problem. When we promote stories that do not have credibility,
yeah, like the kind that they might write in the New York Post or the New York Times or the Washington Compost, lies like that.
Yeah, I'm
lies,
very critical.
Or things you see on CNN or Fox News.
Hang on. It's extraordinarily important to be aware, and I've said this since we first started writing, because I came to the realization as an expert in a number of things. I'm not an expert in everything, but I'm an expert on a lot of things. You know, I know a lot about flying airplanes, for example. I know a lot about entrepreneurial business, for example. I know a lot about the retail business.
No, I know you do.
I know a lot about the Torah. I know a lot about the Torah.
Yep.
There are some things I know a lot about. I know a lot about Paul. I know a lot about Islam. There's some things I'm an expert on. And one of the things that I learned is when I read the newspaper or I listened to a television account, and I've been saying this now for 30 years, that 80% of what you read and what you hear is not true.
Oh, that's true too.
And part of the reason that it's not true, and that the mainstream media has been and continues to be, in fact, it's escalating its promotion of fake news, is because of political correctness and this overriding commitment to tell the story in such a way that it affirms or promotes political correctness, no matter if 100% of the evidence is contrary to it. And half of the reason is because people have grown to be stupid. They don't know how to investigate. They're too lazy to investigate. They just don't do it, and they don't know how to think rationally. So let's lay it out there and say, Fizz, that the majority of what you read and hear in the mainstream media is untrue.
Absolutely.
Now, the majority of what you read...
Because they have agendas.
Yes. The majority of what you read and hear in the new internet-based media sources, news sources, is untrue.
That's true, too. That is absolutely true.
The overwhelming preponderance now of what you have access to is no longer true. And the problem is that in the mainstream media, they all reinforce one another because they all have the same agenda. And in the blogosphere, they all reinforce one another, and the people that are susceptible to the false news are just find all sorts of reinforcement. The more time they spend, the more they're entertained by the reinforcement of that which is false. You know, the first when I was looking at this article about the Egyptian archaeology group that made this announcement, the first links that I clicked were telling the same story, but they weren't credible sources. Reporting exactly the same story.
The thing is,
then when I found actually some credible sources, I said, this is really going around right now. It isn't true.
Well,
now,
now
I'm going to make my point. This is my point.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
This is my point. There is no other group that I'm aware of on this planet of 7 billion souls that is willing to take Yahowah seriously, to carefully translate what he has to say, to try to as accurately present what he has to say, and to look at the oldest sources and to discard all religious corruptions and just lay it out there. This is what he had to say, and to make sense of it, to explain it, to help people understand it. And because we are all flawed and imperfect messengers on behalf of his testimony, and because his testimony is so opposed to everything that is considered credible in society, patriotism, the military, political parties, academia, religion, everything that people believe is true and has value, Yahweh's message is the antithesis of. And so we go out there with, I can't believe that's true. How could, this handful of people have the truth and everybody else be wrong? And so already the most important message that could possibly be told has credibility issues. And any time that we embrace fake news, we destroy it even further. Yeah. Now, let me tell you where I think what we ought to do. And by the way, everybody's free world here, man. In particular.
Yeah. I put about 60 hours of research into what I think, and I think it for a reason. But go ahead. It doesn't matter.
All right.
Yep.
If somebody on their own wishes to promote a news story like that, any one of these stories, they can do that. If they do it in conjunction with Yahweh, I think that is a problem. And here's
I think it would be too. I think it would be too.
Here's my issue. Here's my issue. Is that if you're going to use news or information sources to compare what you hear or see or know to what Yahweh has said, for example, if I look at the evidence for the Berkel impact crater, and I have a filter, and I say, all right, what part of this seems to coincide with what Yahweh had to say about the upwelling of salt water, the location of the flood? How does that relate to what who's the fellow that discovered the Titanic's location? I've forgotten the guy's name. But the explorer that discovered the Titanic's location, he led another expedition into the Black Sea, and he discovered that the sea level of the Black Sea has risen by 500 feet, and it changed from freshwater to saltwater instantly, and both of those two things happened instantly, all the way at the same time that Yahweh says the flood occurred. Now, I am not going to say that what they discovered, or the impact crater, is absolute fact. But I think it's fascinating that it coincides with what Yahweh said. I'm not going to claim that the
Robert Ballard.
Robert Ballard. I'm not going to claim that the papyrus that was prepared by that by the priest that we have found, which is dated back to like 1000 BCE. I'm not going to say that that guy told the truth. But I think it's interesting to compare what he said, what he experienced, to what Yahweh said. I think if we're taking information, even if it is somewhat controversial, but it has some effective scientific and historical, archaeological aspect to it, and it has some credibility in terms of this source really exists, and we can know what it actually says as opposed to getting it second or third hand. And it pertains to something that Yahweh has said, for example, the book on that was written by Schroeder. Schroeder's wrong about most everything, but he got the time. He understood
he understood relativity.
He understood the relative aspects of time.
And he's great on the science.
Right. So at that aspect of the science, I think actually Roy is much better on this science than with Schroeder. But nonetheless, you have to have a filter. But you can use that because you can go to hundreds of sources and verify the 10 to the 12th shift in the relative wavelength of the microwave background. So there's lots of ways to verify it, and what we're doing is we're taking what Yahweh said, this is true. Boy, this is a really interesting affirmation of that, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And so if a story, for example, if a story that is a news story, one of them that's popular is the Hillary has Parkinson's. If we take a news story that bears no relevance whatsoever to Yahweh's testament, doesn't help us understand it, doesn't provide any affirmation of it, and we begin to promote it when it could well disrupt our credibility, that's dangerous. We ought not do it. If it's something that is controversial, for example, all of the scholarly tomes dismiss the papyrus, Kirk, that you're referring to, and they dismiss it by saying, it's because it says blood. The one reference is, that's not enough to say it's true. Well, what they've done is ignored the mountain and rejected it based upon one item. Yes. And so, I don't have a problem with us saying this is from a priestly source. The priest is not a credible witness, but it's really interesting that people would say there's no historical verification of this, when in fact, here is one.
There's quite a few.
And so there are so many things that I think are important for us to take the time to promote that are verifiable, as opposed to things that do not help people understand what Yahweh is offering. Now, the one place where I think that it's that it is okay to venture into the criticism of institutions is we know Yahweh despises the Roman Catholic Church. There's no organization he despises more on all the earth and all of Earth's history. And so, if we go into there's 50 stories we probably covered over the years on pedophilia in the Roman Catholic Church. They're verifiable. They're easy to investigate and affirm. Tell, because Yahweh has gone out of his way to tell us he hates this organization. If we know Yahweh's anti-military, so to show the counterproductive nature of the U.S. military, I think is a useful place for us to go, even though it hurts our credibility because most people are patriotic. Yahweh's not. There's probably nothing we could have done that would have been more controversial than referring to Paul as the plague of death. And so, from a credibility point of view, there's very little you could do that would have your credibility destroyed more than in that. And yet, because Yahweh has gone out of his way to tell us that Paul is the plague of death, that's a place where it's appropriate for us to risk our credibility. There are, for example, the pronunciation and use of Yahweh's name. There's probably nothing that causes people to discount others more quickly than you claiming to know how to pronounce Yahweh's name. Now, it's not hard to figure out how to pronounce Yahweh's name. Extremely easy to go through the vowels in Hebrew and come up with a understanding. It's always been easy. It's been easy to show verification of this is why it is pronounced this way. And yet, when you do it, the critics will dismiss you faster on that than anything else. And
amazing.
So, but is it worth doing? Absolutely. If you're going to,
yes.
So my point is, if we're going to take a credibility hit, take it in places that matter.
Well, you know what? I don't spend a lot of time doing that, but I mean, I honestly think that the upper echelon, I don't even think Intel, by the way, has got anything to do or much to do with keeping me safe or keeping a country safe. I think it's primarily a blackmail operation. Now, that just comes from common sense.
That's true.
It's about
power.
No.
Well, we know for
it's certain. It's a murder operation.
Yeah, well,
it's a government operation.
Well, whether it's a murder or not, I don't know. But we can say
we can say.
This we can say, and we can say for certain. We know for certain that the United States government, through the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, and through the military intelligence operations, has chosen to ignore the U.S. Constitution, has chosen to spy on Americans, unreasonable search without due process, and that they do it ubiquitously. They've done it for decades, and that the United States is willing to create a false case against an individual that they view is threatening to them, and that this spy apparatus is more far-reaching than any in human history, and it's extraordinarily destructive to people's freedoms. And we know that the vast majority of Americans don't care. We know for certain it's happening. We know those perpetrating it lie about it, and we know most Americans don't care.
You know how I know it's a murder operation? Are you aware of how the brand of cigar Cohiba came to be? If you research that, you'll understand. It was the CIA who tried to kill
I know they're
Castro.
delicious.
Yeah. But they're banned in the States. They don't want the products of Cuba.
Let's talk about the CIA, for example. The CIA has
Catholics in action
and covert operations to disrupt governments around the world. The CIA, through the State Department, was specifically responsible, most recently, for the uprising in the Ukraine, where a group of mobsters managed to overturn the popularly elected government. And then the CIA managed, with the cooperation of the State Department and U.S. politicians, to blame the Russians for doing what we had, in fact, done. And today, the CIA is promoting the myth that, and most Americans now believe it, that the Russians interfered with American elections, when in fact it's the American CIA that has been the most active in interfering with elections and governments around the world. We are accusing our foes of what we are guilty of.
You mean like the bombings in Turkey?
So there is so little today that can be trusted. The mainstream media cannot be trusted. The government cannot be trusted. The military most certainly cannot be trusted. No religious institution can be trusted. The police and the justice system in America cannot be trusted. We have
and it's not even just the mainstream media. The alternative media can't be trusted anymore. Most of that's lies as well.
The alternative media, which had the initial hope of holding the mainstream media accountable, squandered it.
Well, now some of them haven't. Some of them haven't. I've listened to lawyers talk about how they went in, they presented their case, and to Intel committees as an example, and it gets thrown aside. Nobody does anything with it. High-ranking former judges, lawyers, sheriffs, and when they're very credible people. Who was the fellow that wrote the Creature of Jekyll Island? I mean, that's alternative media. But if you listen to Griffith, you listen to him. He's very credible. He's a good researcher. This information's out there. I mean, and they're not going to be.
Griffin is not a news source. He wrote a.
Well, he is a news source. Well, that's your to me that he's still a news source.
No. He's
okay. Well,
He provided
He's not a breaking news source.
He provided research. The problem we have today is that the Internet has made it possible for virtually every kind of nut out there to promote things that are just not true, and it's this giant credibility sink.
Yep.
That's true too.
And if we're not careful, we are going to destroy our credibility at a time where we're the only people out there willing to trust Yahweh's credibility. And it is in our interest, even if we're fascinated by these stories, it's in our interest only to speak about that which is being presented as news, if it has a direct bearing on something that Yahweh has said. Otherwise, we really ought not do it. I don't know how many times I have been told that 9/11 was not perpetrated by the 19 Muslims, that it was the U.S. government that pulled off which is a completely incompetent organization, the U.S. government, pulled off the biggest hoax of all time and destroyed the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, and it had nothing to do with the two 757s that were flown into the buildings or the Pentagon. And the number of people that believe that, astounding. And there's not a shred of evidence. And yet the lies are promoted by so many different people in so many different ways. It leads people astray. We ought to be very careful about what we say, because there just aren't enough voices out there willing to focus on Yahweh's testimony. And Yahweh's testimony, while eminently credible, is viewed exactly the opposite. There's a reason that Yahweh twice in Dabarim provided a way for us to know whether or not we can trust whether or not information was coming from him or not. And this is important because there's a huge cult out there now that is an Enoch cult. We've had to engage them on this program. Huge cult. The largest cult in the world, the largest cult in the history of the world, is a Pauline Christian cult. Mm-hmm. Yahweh provided a way for us to know whether or not those who claim to speak for him are telling the truth. There is no such test for fake news sites or for mainstream news sites. He didn't tell us.
Yahweh gave us the news.
This is how you can trust or not trust or reject a mainstream news site. Now, he did give us, and Roy tried to write a rebuttal to a fellow, I guess his name was Max, that wrote me first with just is Yahweh Yosha? And you can't even you can't ask the question in that order, is Yahweh Yosha, if you have any concept of who Yahweh is or who Yosha is. You could ask, what is the relationship between Yosha and Yahweh? Mm-hmm. But you can't say, is Yahweh Yosha? That's asinine. And so I tried to explain what this thing was, what it was. And the guy's first comment is, you're in violation of the Torah. You're judging me by when I say
you're making judgments. So you went right to the New Testament. I know.
Okay, so Yahweh did give us a Nesama so that we could be judgmental and discern what is right and wrong, which is true and false. But I don't think that he gave it to us so that we could scour the blogosphere. I think he gave it to us so that we could evaluate the mantra of man, religion and politics and patriotism and the like, and compare it to what he had to say to determine which one is right, which one is wrong, so that we could determine what is right and wrong. I don't think that it.
Hey, Craig, I have a question for you.
I don't think it's the
back
purpose
in
of
Gan
it is
Eden,
to discern
in the
between
garden.
blogospheres. Go ahead.
Back in the garden, when Adam and Chawah took from the tree of knowledge, what did they gain?
Well, they gained a lot.
Yeah.
When
gain a knowledge of good and evil.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous gain. Now, but with that gain comes responsibility. There's a tremendous price that's associated with that gain. Now, once you know both good and evil, when previously you only knew good, now you have to be discerning. Now you got to work at it. Now you do have to be judgmental, but it's again.
But the religion of secular humanism says.
Again, understand that in that context, the comparison between right and wrong wasn't between two different streams of human testimony, but between what they were going to experience outside of the garden and what Yahowah had said. What Yahowah said about life versus what man promotes about death. That was what now they need to be judgmental about and to exercise good judgment regarding. And it's that comparison, understanding what Yahowah said, coming to trust it, coming to better understand it, to know what's right and wrong and what we can trust, that is a responsibility. It's a tremendous opportunity. It's a place where we ought to invest our time and our judgment. But to determine whether or not a blogosphere is right, to determine which is more valid, the New York Times or some blogger on an issue unrelated to Yahowah is a waste of our time. The fact is, neither one can be trusted.
Yeah, so most people are writing from a secular view. And in the religion of secular humanism, there is no right and wrong. We're just a bunch of apes that evolved.
Well, that used to be
no morality.
Okay, I used to think that you were correct, and in fact, I might have even written it and promoted it sometime that they've gotten rid of the concept of right and wrong. That's not true anymore. In political correctness, wrong is right.
Yeah.
In political correctness, they do care. In political correctness, the Google lie
it's all about
to be
caring.
embraced.
It's all about caring.
It's all about hating. It's all about ostracizing. For example, the North Carolina passed some time ago, a year ago, the bathroom laws. It said, you go to a bathroom based upon how you were born. Now, that law affected 1/1000th of 1% of North Carolina people, and yet because
it turned to governorship, it cost billions of dollars supposedly.
Because it
insane.
Was an opposition to political correctness, it could not be tolerated, and so
there is no tolerance.
North
in
Carolina
reversed
it yesterday.
Yeah, they did. Sure, they did.
The pain associated with being opposed to political correctness was too extreme. See, political correctness
the money
is not
was,
that they don't care between right and wrong. It's that wrong must be accepted as
becomes right.
And anyone who dare says that no, homosexuality is not normal. It only 2% of the population is homosexual. Therefore, it is by definition abnormal. I'm not saying that I could care. I mean, I really do. I could care less if someone's homosexual. Doesn't bother me at all. Don't care. But don't promote it as normal when it's abnormal. The whole debate on a gender-used bathroom, what a waste of breath. Why would you care about what happens 1/1000th of the population?
Look, when gubernatorial ships start turning on whether or not they allow transgender bathroom breaks, you are living in a surreal, upside-down, insane world.
Right.
And we are.
We're talking about things
surreal?
we ought not be talking about, and the only reason we're talking about them is because the Christian right, thinks that it's their duty on behalf of their God to oppose the left. And the left thinks it's their duty based upon socialist secular humanism to oppose the Christian right.
Right.
And so you have this whole debate between two sides, neither of which can be trusted, neither of which are credible, and you have these enormous waste of time. We ought not engage. We ought not care. We just ought to.
Well, no, we should engage to the point that we expose it, and that's my opinion of it. I mean, I'm not talking about taking sides. I'm talking about exposing it. But getting into the Torah, there was a study, Lisa
for example,
and I did.
We should mock the homosexual hatred promoted by Christians, and make it sound like that their God wants to have every homosexual go to hell. That's the point of view of way too many Christians. It's stupid. People are free to do whatever they want. You're free to do drugs. You're free to be a homosexual. You're free to be a pervert.
You're free to be a Muslim. You're free to be a Christian.
Right. You're free
to be a rabbinic
stupid
Jew.
as you want to be, and we ought not interfere with people's freedom to be stupid.
I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
And
I don't.
So we should mock both sides.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
And until people are willing to do that and step way out there and say it's all a big lie, then they're living in La La Land.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct. They are.
Yes. That's the point of it all. You know what? As soon as I get some ammunition to bury any of these politicians, I'm putting it out. I'm putting it out. Because frankly, there is no savior of the world other than Yahweh. Than Yahweh.
Yep.
And he's not saving the whole world. He's saving people who listen to him, period. And,
Now,
that's not many.
Individual politicians, I think, should be subject to criticism.
Ridicule.
When they're in a position of power or influence. For example, when the Pope comes out and makes some stupid statement about economics in the world when he is a communist. I am going to expose it and condemn it. When the president of Turkey comes out and he is running a fascist totalitarian government, and he comes out and calls Europeans fascist Nazis, I'm going to say this man is projecting his flaws on others. When the United States arms the fundamentalist Muslims under the impression that fundamentalist Muslims are going to kill other fundamentalist Muslims, so that we can arm the Awakening program, which are Sunni Muslims, and we can arm the Shia Muslims, and that by arming both, we'll create this Shangri-La in Iraq, where Turkey is part of NATO. We're allies with the Kurds, and Turkey is using our warplanes and our bombs to murder the Kurds, because we're at war with the Islamic State, and the Kurds are at war with the Islamic State, while the Russians and the Turks are killing the Kurds. I mean, you couldn't be any dumber than we have been.
Look,
and so
I have got a YouTube. I have got a YouTube of Barack Obama standing in front of the press corps. Okay, and you know what he says? He said we need to ramp up the training and the arming of ISIL. He calls ISIS ISIL for some reason. How can anybody stand there in front of a press corps, talk about fighting ISIS, and at the same time literally stand there and say, I'm ramping up the training and the arming of them?
Well,
because we don't have a press corps. We haven't had them in years.
I'm going to tell you that Barack Obama, if he said such a thing, then he is
it's
just
not
guilty
if.
to think
I have it on tape.
Okay. I'm going to tell you that one or two things is true, Larry. Either he had what you call a senior moment, where he's thinking one thing and saying exactly the opposite. We need to ramp up in training the fundamentalist, the Free Syrian Army to go fight ISIL. Either he's thinking that and said it wrong, or somebody has jury-rigged what he said, because it's impossible.
It's just standing in front of a press corps.
I'm telling you, it's impossible. That's why you've got to have a filter, and we have to be careful that we apply a filter. And if he just misspoke, then we're all guilty of that. The number of times that I was thinking about, you say one thing, and the words come out exactly the opposite, and it's because your mind and your mouth are moving at different speeds. We all do it, and that's a possibility.
Well, maybe so, but that was the narrative. I don't know what to say.
I'm sorry, and the narrative is false. We have a lot of reasons to despise Barack Obama. Lots of reasons. Him training the Islamic State, or ISIL as he would call it, is not one of those reasons. Now, him creating the Islamic State by choosing to, not creating them, the Islamic State was created by George W. Bush. Absolutely created by George W. Bush and Petraeus and Condoleezza Rice and Emperor Palpatine.
You know what? Whether it doesn't matter. Okay, just say the U.S. government and the last three presidents.
That's
just say it. Matter of fact, since Al Qaeda really became ISIS, let's just say Jimmy Carter.
No.
Because there's the truth. Yes,
Al Qaeda did not become ISIS.
Yes, it is.
No, it didn't.
It did.
Oh, okay. Come on, Larry. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, well, I'm disappointed too, because that's really what happened.
I don't like Jimmy Peanut Head Carter because he's an anti-Semite.
It is,
about that.
There are lots of things that are important to understand now, as it relates to what has happened in the Islamic world. And the reason it's important is because so much of Yahweh's prophecy deals with what's happening in the Islamic world. And because the most coordinated, the most comprehensive satanic religion ever conceived is Islam. Now, I became an expert on al-Qaeda, and I came to the conclusion very early in that process that al-Qaeda was irrelevant. That was my conclusion, and I really studied it. I studied how al-Qaeda even came into existence. How the name was first conceived by the United States, by the way, and what the purpose of al-Qaeda originally was. And you go back to Jimmy Carter and Zbigniew Brzezinski. They created it. And they created it because they wanted to give the Russians a taste of what the Russians gave America in Vietnam. And so they specifically armed and equipped fundamentalist Muslims to attack Russians in Afghanistan, to destabilize the Russian-backed government. And what they created was this monster that exists now in Afghanistan of the Taliban, because we rented, the United States under Zbigniew Brzezinski and Jimmy Carter rented the Taliban from the Pakistani government. Rented them. We rented them by paying the Pakistani government hundreds of millions of dollars, in fact, billions of dollars worth of weapons. That's how they came into being. And al-Qaeda, since they were a beneficiary of $5 billion worth of American weapons, would not have been an enemy of the United States had it not been for King George I deciding that he was going to defend Saudi Arabia against Saddam Hussein, when in fact what we had created as al-Qaeda, the base, because of the database, wanted that distinction, and they had lots of credibility because they had just defeated the Russians in Afghanistan with our weapons, and so they wanted the honor. And when King George I prevailed with the Saudi Arabians, because they knew King George was easy to control, and they knew that Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda would have been difficult to control post-victory, they decided to go with the Americans, and so the first Gulf War under King George I is what turned al-Qaeda against America. But the 9/11 attack wasn't by al-Qaeda. It was Abu Shayyaf that created that scheme, and the scheme was created down in the Philippines. And the perpetrator of that scheme was a guest of the United States government in prison for the first bombing of the World Trade Center. By the time the second one occurred, and the United States government absolutely knew the details of his plan because it was given to the Americans by the Filipinos and actually published in around the world. Now, al-Qaeda was never anything but one of 1,000 fundamentalist Islamic groups. That's all it was. One of 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
Nothing but fundamentalist Muslims. And they attacked the United States.
Yeah,
very well funded and well armed.
Yes. And certainly right after 9/11, almost immediately after 9/11, al-Qaeda went from being one of 1,000 Islamic groups to being almost irrelevant. And they quickly became irrelevant. They became a pseudonym for extremist Islam as opposed to just calling the terrorist fundamentalist Muslims. That was the only thing that they had in common. But al-Qaeda ceased to function a long, long time ago. And the Islamic State was a direct derivative of America creating the Awakening Program. It didn't come from al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda was irrelevant. Al-Qaeda did not exist in Iraq. That was one of the great lies of George W. Bush. There was no al-Qaeda influence in Iraq. What happened with the Islamic State, and it's important that we know this because its influence on Last Days Prophecy, the Magog War. The Islamic State is a direct derivative of America's invasion of Iraq when America started to build an army for the Shiites and when we effectively gave Iraq to the Shia Muslims from Iran. And when we did that, Petraeus said, we have a problem now, and that we've armed the Shia against the Sunni, and now the Shia are going to do to the Sunni what the Sunni had previously done to the Shia. And so the only way that America is capable of functioning is to have a stalemate where you arm both sides. We make a lot of weapons and make a lot of people rich by doing that. Yep. So we arm both sides. And so Petraeus' Awakening Program was to provide weapons to Sunni warlords who were part of the old Ba'ath administration of Saddam Hussein. And those are the leaders of the Islamic State. And the reason that they rose to prominence was because of Fallujah. When the Shia Muslims, using American weapons, attack helicopters, artillery, tanks, started destroying Fallujah, which was a high percentage Sunni Muslim. When they destroyed it and flattened the place, this was the only way that the Sunni Muslims could protect Sunnis against the now army that America had provided to the Shia. That is the Islamic State. That's how it emerged. And once they banded together with the old Ba'ath administrators, whether they be bankers or politicians or generals, they formed a formidable force. They found the weak underbelly of the Shias, which is they're cowards, like all Muslims. They scream and talk a great game until you hit them back, and they cowered, and so they got these enormous stashes of American weapons, and they went through the Shias like they weren't even there. And what they did is they used the MacArthur theory of, if I attack the enemy where the enemy is not, I'll suffer fewer casualties. And so where they went is where the population was majority Sunni, like Mosul. And they went to the places in Syria and Iraq that the majority Sunni Muslims, and they promised to protect the Sunni Muslims from the Shia Muslims. And that's how the Islamic State grew. That's their history. We created the Islamic State. It wasn't created by Obama. It was created by George W. Bush.
Nobody said it was created by Obama. He just paid to arm them, pal. Yeah, he did.
His arming of them is insignificant compared to what happened under the Bush administration.
So you got a monster named Bush, and I know you particularly hate Bush. I hate him too. I hate him. That doesn't give Obama. You can't obfuscate any responsibility from Obama. He was a bastard too.
Come on,
let's
Obama
just tell him like it is.
What's fair to
criticize
Obama as it relates to the Islamic State is that when Obama made the decision with John McCain to bomb Gaddafi into oblivion, they created the world's largest bazaar for arms for the Muslim world.
Oh, for
what
sure. And when they took out Libya?
I'm sure that was just an accident, though, Craig.
No,
they're
it
just
wasn't.
stupid
That was deliberate.
people.
And what they did in Libya is had a profound influence, not only in northern Africa, but also on Syria. And so then the second mistake by Obama as it relates to the Islamic, well, not the second, but the next one in line, was when he decided to go to war with the Islamic State over the fake beheadings of 2 Americans, where the film of the beheadings was fabricated, was absolutely false. And so he then declared war on them. When you declare war on a Muslim, you're playing right into their hands.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing that Obama did, though, as it relates to the Islamic world, it was a disaster. So I can't stand Obama. The first thing that he did is he gave a speech for the first month of his presidency. He went to Har University in Cairo, which is the seat of the Muslim Brotherhood, and told Muslims this is their time, that America has never been at war with Islam.
Oh, my
never been
God,
at war with
in
Islam.
Egypt?
This is your
He did the
time,
same
Muslims.
thing.
And they rose up.
Yeah, he pushed the Arab Spring. We know all that.
Yes, he did.
We've been through last 8 years of that monster, racist, bigot, former little CIA guy. That's all he ever was. His mom was CIA. He's CIA, just like Bush, both Bushes, and Clinton too. It's time the American public woke up and said, how is it that people who have never had a substantial job in their life are suddenly in charge of the biggest economy in the world? Don't you think that might be like a rational question for the average American?
Wait, I know.
King George
I know.
didn't. Yeah, King George I didn't. King George II didn't. Obama didn't. None of them did.
That's right. Clinton didn't. So how is it people who have never had a job as important as mine, as tough as mine?
Yeah, are running the
and
largest
I'm Joe
economy in the world.
Nobody out here. I'm Mr.
All
Middle
you've
Class.
got to do is say, during the time they've been running the world's largest economy, is it gone from having a net worth, or is it now?
I know they've sent it to oblivion. And you know what? These are things that need to be. I expose those kinds of things. I ask those questions. I mean, could any rational person say a guy who's never had a serious, significant job, and I'm not talking about being an adjunct professor of racism studies, I'm talking about something serious that actually, creates paychecks.
Barack Obama was a community organizer. That is a real job.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't even say that with a straight face.
Yes.
Wait. I have the dumbest leader of the Western world. A former substitute drama teacher. Candy floss for brain, Trudeau. The guy is a freaking idiot.
He was a drama teacher, was he? He ought to go down there and visit Chicago with the former, the guy with the master's degree in ballet.
Trudeau has 2 things going for him. One is his father's name, and he's a handsome young man.
His father was a scumbag.
Yes, he was.
A big scumbag.
Everybody in politics is a self-serving, conniving, dishonest individual, and the vast majority of what they say is counterproductive. And that includes the present occupant of the White House.
But then you have the special little cupcakes like the Trudeaus or Clintons and Bushes. You have the special little cupcakes. I'm really... Trudeau is bringing in hundreds of thousands of Muslims into Canada.
You could say that there were, several hundred Roman leaders and that there were some like Caligula and Nero and Hadrian that were worse than the average Roman emperor. It's kind of like saying, well, let's compare John McCain to Obama.
Yeah, no, I understand there are some standouts. I wanted to say that, look, I'm really hurting in this chair. I wanted to say this. We did a little study, a Torah study, and I don't know how many people have heard this, but this is kind of interesting. You know what kind of wood the Ark of Covenant was made out of, right? Acacia wood.
Well, there's some issues as to what the nature of the wood is, other than it was a laminate creation. But it is true that the wood that Yahweh seems to go to time and again is the acacia tree, if you were to have, and it is an extraordinary tree.
Yeah, and I just want to mention this. And inside there was the Torah, correct? I mean, that was correct. Inside the Ark of the Covenant. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. You're not talking about the Noah's Ark. You're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. I'm
talking about the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed. Okay. No, the Ark of the Covenant was not made with laminate. Okay. Yes, the Ark of the Covenant, acacia wood. I understand. Okay,
yeah,
I'm sorry. See, there was a good example of where if you had just taken the first clip of what I said was stupid.
It's okay.
Because I
say stupid things all the time.
Yeah.
And what I should have said is not Al Qaeda morphed into ISIS, but Al Qaeda was its foreshadowings. And by the way, we created both groups, not one. That's really what I'm saying. So I'm not giving any of them a break. Okay. So anyway, bottom line is, those have a needle on them. They used to use the needle from the acacia tree, and isn't it interesting that the Torah was inside there, and there was this crown of thorns on Yahusha, right?
Yeah.
And that would have been acacia, and he was the Torah come to life. Yeah. Isn't that kind of an interesting concept?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and of course as Lisa found out and shared with the members of the covenant is when Yah was talking about the ant. And all this time I'm thinking about the ant. Okay, we know a lot about the ant now, and everything you said about the ant. Ants have no foreman, no hierarchy, no control mechanism, no religion, but they work together in harmony without any government kinds of influence or religious kind of influence. And you think, but wait a minute, they're under the ground. How would anybody even know that unless you study them when they're hunting for food? But you would not know that the queen in the ant and in the bee kingdom is not powerful. In fact, the ants will go kill the queen when they think the queen is
not producing enough.
Them in any way, not productive. The queen, the worst life in the world is to be the queen. It's a miserable life, and so I always think, but they're underground, and what you found is that's not really the case. The case is that the most interesting ants of all are the acacia tree ants, and how they not only protect the tree, but the tree nourishes them and protects them. And the whole story of what you can learn about the ants as it relates to that tree is just stunning.
Yes.
How these little bitty creatures
work in symbiosis together.
Yes. Yeah, little bitty creatures keep the elephants from destroying them. It's just amazing.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance, research acacia ants, and you will be amazed. They're really an ant that is truly, in my mind, set apart. Another very fascinating find about acacia. In Egypt, they pulled from a clay jar a honey that it wasn't crystallized, and it was still full of live bacteria and nutrients, and there's only one honey in the world that will last past a few thousand years.
Yeah, the one from that tree.
Only from the acacia honey.
Although honey is the most extraordinary nutrient in the sense of its ability, without any special care, of being able to survive and be edible and nourishing thousands of years after it was produced. There is something, and of course, when Yahweh uses the story of honey, you're talking about in the natural world, something that's not just sweet, but something that has extraordinary longevity. His metaphors work way beyond, and they just flat out.
Are you aware of how ancient Israel harvested honey? It's a very interesting thing. They would make these clay tubes from the earth right there in Israel, and they're hollow inside, and on one end is closed up, and the other end is free and open so that the bees can come in and make their hive and leave whenever they feel to. And when the hive becomes big enough, I mean, it's in a clay vessel. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
They make honey in a clay vessel. And when it's time to harvest the honey, they just reach in and take out the honey. And it's usually set along the fence lines of property lines, like a low wall. And they sit atop the low wall so that they can propagate the fields.
Yeah.
And the world is the field.
Yeah.
And you are the clay.
Interesting as our
and Torah is the
evolves,
honey.
Yeah, as our world evolves towards the last days, al-Akron from Yahweh's perspective, bees are dying. We are desperately close to losing the bee population. And you might say, what do we care? We lose the bee population. Well, about
90%
about a quarter of the world's food requires pollination. All fruit. And
they have trucks that go around now with beehives, and they rent them out, and they go from farm to farm to farm. And these
you can make a lot of
if you have an orchard, you have to rent trucks filled with beehives to go pollinate your orchard because there's not enough bees to pollinate it otherwise. Yeah, and there's lots of reasons.
I could bring some of the super bees down here from the Caribbean. They're as big as hummingbirds. No lie.
Those are the killer bees, aren't they?
Now, I want to tell you an area where because of political correctness in the media and academia, where you lose all credibility to attack, and yet it has to be attacked, and it has to be attacked because of the purpose of it and the implications of it. The idea of man-made global warming. Mm-hmm. This happens to be an area where the purported increase in carbon dioxide, when it doesn't even, it's just the tiniest fraction of 1%. And while the percentage of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere has been much higher than it is now, long before man even existed. Man did not create global warming. And the only reason it's being promoted is as a control mechanism. It's a means to control, and it's a means to shift assets from those who are productive to those who are unproductive.
Money. Do you know how much this stuff breaks in a month?
But the politician as the intermediary, empowering them and causing enormous amounts of people to become dependent upon them, which gives them more power.
Yep.
That's the entire purpose of it. And because it is a control mechanism designed to influence the people during the last days, it is a myth that we will take a tremendous credibility hit to criticize, that nonetheless we need to criticize because it plays such an enormous role in promoting the adversarial position of socialist secular humanism. Now, I want to tell you another one that, and this takes us right back to Zion. In both, whether it be socialist secular humanism, Judaism, or Christianity, to speak of the end of the world as we know it, of Yahweh's return, of the timing of the tribulation, when you move into that with an overwhelming preponderance of the world, you move instantly into the kook realm. There are places where that credibility hit is worthwhile, and it's worthwhile here because Yahowah and Yahshua uses al-Akaron to speak specifically of the last days. And he said that during the last days that he is going to obliterate all traces of religion. Now, because he has not obliterated all traces of religion, if you did not know what time he was speaking of, it would appear throughout human history that he wasn't telling the truth, unless you understand when the last days are. And so I bring this up because if it wasn't possible to determine when the last days are going to be, then Yahweh should never have made the statement that he's going to destroy all vestiges of religion. He made the statement in 745 BCE. We're now 2017 CE. It hasn't happened. Now, if you don't know when the last days are, the prophecy is actually counterproductive. It creates well, it hasn't happened. He predicted it was going to happen. It hasn't happened. And if you don't know when the last days are, even if you weren't going to say, well, it's a credibility sink, it wouldn't do you any good. It doesn't do you any good after it's happened, because after it's happened, if you were religious, you're part of what's being destroyed, right?
Who are you going to argue with?
Yeah, who are you going to argue? Not like who are you going to argue with? You aren't even there to argue.
You'll be dust.
Yeah, because the primary artifact of religion are the human souls that it affects.
Right.
You know, the buildings are bad. Their New Testament is bad. The souls that it affects are a far more pervasive influence, a more deadly influence. So there's no one there. So it doesn't do you any good after the fact. So it only does you good if you know when he's talking about. And I would say that Yahweh would never have given the prophecy and tied it to the last days if it wasn't straightforward. I'm going to say reasonably easy to determine when the last days are. And Larry, you and I have engaged a whole lot of nincompoops over the years on the last days who have some really crazy ideas. And
me too.
I've been really clear about this and saying I don't claim to be right. I'm just going to tell you that all of the evidence points to him returning on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, which the best I can calibrate on the pagan Roman Catholic calendar is sundown on the 2nd of October, 2033. And it's important because
5:45 sunset Israel time.
Yeah. And the reason that this is important is because Yahweh talks about this remnant of Zion, the signpost continuing all the way through the last days. And you realize that Zion, that there are 4 events on Zion that play out through human history that are essential for us to know. And that Zion is completely unchanged over the course of that history. And, of course, the first implication of Zion, the first play of those 4, is when Abraham and Yishak go up to Moriah to establish the covenant, celebrating Pesach with Yahweh there. That's the first act on Zion. The second act of Zion takes place exactly 20 Yobel later, when Dode buys the threshing floor, which would later become the Temple Mount. He builds his home on the lower part of the ridgeline of Moriah, and we're told specifically then that this is Zion. So we're told specifically Zion is directly associated with Dode's home, the threshing floor of which became the Temple Mount, and of course the summit of the mountain, which is so close nearby. That's the second aspect of Zion. The most important thing that took place on Zion, most important signpost, was when Yosha fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. On where? Zion.
Same spot.
Becoming the ultimate signpost, right?
Mm-hmm.
That upright pillar. And then what's?
Oh, you mean the lamb caught in the thicket?
Yeah. So
that word is a very interesting word in Hebrew.
40 Yobel later. Exactly the same lamb that Yahweh provided. Here I am, fulfilling the Pesach as the lamb. Yahweh will provide the lamb. That's what he told Abraham and Yishak. And he did exactly that.
Yes, that was the gift to the children of Israel. And what did we do? We spit it out of our mouths.
So, and Yahweh said that
the
greater light would become visible as a sign for the Moed, which is the Moed Mikre, Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, Shabbat. And on the fourth day, year 4000 Yah. That happened to be 2033 on our pagan calendars. And when you calculate the prophecy of Daniel, you find that Yahweh, in the form of Yosha, walked into Jerusalem 4 days before Pesach in year 4000 Yah, which was 2033 on the pagan Roman calendar. What's 40 Yobel from 2033?
So 4 major events happen on the same hill, and it equates to the fourth day, and smart Jews like Einstein, who know math much better than me, can figure this stuff out.
Yeah. Now, what's also interesting is that Yahweh is not returning to Zion. He's returning to Olives, which is just across the valley. And the reason he's returning to Olives, not Zion, although he is building his home on Zion, is because the area between Dod's home lies in ruins, and the area between Dod's home and where he's going to build his home is the most revolting, decadent, satanic place on earth. The Islamic Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque. And so Yahweh said, I ain't going there. I am not going to be associated with those satanic temples. I'm not returning there. I'm going to return to the Mount of Olives, which is symbolic of the Spirit. And I'm going to cause an earthquake and an upwelling of water that goes from the Mount of Olives all the way to the sea. It is going to eliminate what's on the Temple Mount now, and then living waters are going to flow over it. And then Yahweh's going to build his home on Zion.
Because what could be better than to wash away the filth and the harlotry and the disgusting whoredom that has lived atop that hill?
Right. To have the Mount of Olives representing the Spirit, having the fissure in the earth that swallows it, and then the living waters that flow out of it, wash all that rubbish into the sea, which is symbolic of Gentiles, and out of the land. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Then he's going to build his home. Now, there are...
Do you know which gate he's coming through?
Is important. The reason that timing is important is that Yahweh said in Yashayah that he was going to eliminate all traces of religion. What's the first trace of religion he's going to eliminate?
Islam.
Islam, right there on the Temple Mount.
Rock, yeah.
Judaism, with all the little minions putting their little prayers into the rocks. All of it's gone. The Roman Catholic churches there, Church of the Holy Sepulchre, all gone.
Yeah.
The Muslim graves that are on that side of the Mount of Olives, because they want to block the arrival of the Christian God going through that eastern gate.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. So anyway, all of that, but the reason this is important is that all of that tells you that since Yahweh has the 6+1 plan, that year 6,000 Yah is when it's going to occur, and 40 Yobel from the fulfillment of these dates is when he's going to return. And we're going to be the fulfillment of the last two Moed Mikre. And wouldn't you know it, that Sukkah, the celebration of the Shabbat of 7, occurs on a natural Shabbat, Friday evenings when it begins? Mm-hmm. And there's 2 blood moons. Clips exactly
that's coincidental, isn't it? Before we move on, I want to talk about this Eastern Gate for a moment, and Islam. And any part Yahudah may have had. How would a Muslim who has Muslim texts called the Quran, based on the word Kara, which is Hebrew, and why would they even know which gate? If a Yahud perhaps didn't tell them.
Oh, of course. They did.
Well, they told them everything. That's why they got all confused.
That's right. But what's interesting is
and you have lifted up for yourselves your deathbed in the fire.
Oh, of course. You know, who provided Muhammad with half the Quran? Half the Quran is a bastardization, a corruption of the stories that are found in the Talmud, which are corruptions and bastardizations of the stories that are found in the Torah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So.
And who gave Shaul Paul to the world? Yahudah.
Yeah, of course. Who gave Hitler?
Who gave Akiba to the world?
Yeah. Akiba.
Yahudah.
Muhammad. Yeah, Muhammad. All Jewish.
You know, some of the worst people I know are Jews.
Lenin.
Some of the most evil.
Lenin, Jewish,
evil, murderous.
But the thing we have to be careful of here is that while Jews have built their own deathbed, which is exactly what Yahweh said they would do, he still loves them.
Yep.
Does he love Akiba? Absolutely not. Does he love Bar Kokhba? No. Did he love Hitler as a Jew? No. Or Lenin as a Jew? Absolutely not.
No.
But he still loves his people.
He pleads with us, Yahudah, to open our eyes, to listen to his word.
He said, my people are destroyed because they do not know, they do not understand. And he says, because you have forgotten my Torah, I forget your children. So,
and I felt like a forgotten child. When I grew up as a Jew, we weren't very liked. I was punched in the face for killing Jesus. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way,
I didn't even know what that meant.
And all you'd have to say is, beyond the fact that it was that crucifixion was a Roman form of execution, and beyond the fact that the Jews and Yahudah had no authority.
No authority at all.
Providence. So, the Jews and Yahudah could not kill anyone. They had no authority whatsoever. And the Romans had to pronounce the sentence, and it was Romans that beat him to crisp, and it was Romans that nailed him to the upright pole. All Romans.
This is a 2,000-year historical
Romans. All you have to say
guilt of the Jews.
If you hate Jews so much, wasn't he a Jew?
Yep.
This person that you've based your religion on, forget the fact that you don't know his name. The fact that you've given him a Greek name. Forget for that for a moment. Wasn't he Jewish? Weren't all 12 apostles Jewish? Wasn't the entire Torah, prophets, and Psalms written by Jews? Why are you anti-Jewish?
And yet they hunted us in Europe for 2,200 years and still want to do it today.
Killers of Jesus, and it still exists today. Roman Catholics in particular. Look at Jews, you killed Jesus. And of course, the very institution that they derived their name performed the trial and the punishment. And oh, by the way, do you think if Jews were so powerful they killed God, why would you oppose it? If we Jews were so powerful, we could kill God. Why would you oppose us? And why don't you realize that Christianity is Roman Catholicism,
other nations
and it was Rome that killed us?
Yeah, but y'all thinking logically. That can't happen in this world.
Oh, my. Yeah. Now even Trumpster is saying, no, you can't build those houses. Don't build houses. We must hate Jews for their opposition to
building
peace.
A family home.
Because they're building homes in their land.
Wow.
Yeah, God forbid.
God forbid. What we need to do is we need to side with those who burn
down homes
to the ground with people in them, and who go into homes and kidnap the girls.
And throw gays off the roof. Yeah, we need to support those guys.
We need to support those guys
because
the little
and the nations came together to do
job
to come against
on the Google site. She's putting her arms around the homosexual and the Jew. So, kumbaya.
Oh, please don't.
So, Zion, 4 events occurred. We can date them, and therefore we can understand when Yahweh says, I'm going to obliterate all traces of religion in the last days when he returns, that is year 6000 Yah. It is Yom Kippurim. It equates to October 2nd at sundown on a Monday in 2033 on our pagan calendars. And the first thing he's going to do when he touches down on olives is cause an earthquake that's going to split from moving from olives all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, and he is going to swallow and destroy, wash away all traces of religion from the place that is important to him, pushing it out to the sea.
He's going to clean up his harlot.
Yeah, go ahead,
if it's not that Yobel year, then the next one, everybody who saw the return of Israel would be dead. So he would be a liar.
100% of them would die. Yeah, if it's not in the Yobel year of 2033,
then it
the
can't
next
happen.
Yobel year, it'd be 2088. And by the way, and that one would be then, rather than 40 Yobel from Yosha's sacrifice, it would be 41 Yobel.
Right.
And 100% of those who had witnessed Yisrael being formed again would be dead. And therefore, all of the prophecies that he has made regarding Yisrael returning to the land in the last days would, and then coinciding with his return, would have been false.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, is there a possibility?
So the next Yobel, wait, I have a question. Don't leave this yet. The next Yobel, those that will be Yehuda that have to administrate and put everybody back into the land, in the next Yobel, are we free? We can go play in the universe? Because that would be cool.
Yeah.
That's celebrated.
Now, one of the things that is interesting here is that while there is the possibility that in the transition between the two, the two calendars, go between the Roman pagan calendar that we use to mark time now and Yahweh's calendar, that it could be off by a few years. The difficulty of that, of course, is the Daniel prophecy, because it's exacting to what we call year 33 CE, 4 days before Passover.
Mm-hmm.
The other problem is the witness writings when they talk, particularly in Mataniah, about the timing of what took place on Monday, which was, if you will, Palm on Monday.
Week.
Yeah, so they returned on Monday. What happened on Thursday with the celebration of Pesach? What happened on Friday as Pesach continued with the sacrifice? What happened that evening in trying to get the body prepared prior to the Shabbat? The fact that the special Shabbat of Matzah and a natural Shabbat fell on the same day? And the fact that we're told on the first day of the week, which is Bekurim, on firstborn children, that Yosha returned from Sheol, that timing of Pesach based upon the moon phases only works in 33 CE, which has to coincide with the Daniel prophecy of 30, which arrives at 33 CE, which happens to be exactly 1,000 years from the 968 BCE first cornerstone laid of Yahweh's home on Mount Moriah.
There's another fly in the ointment.
2033, two blood moons and
2029.
Come on, people in a natural Shabbat. Come on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we know that the other fly in the ointment is we know because NASA has told us we know when Apophis, the asteroid, is coming, and if that hits, all bets are off now because there ain't nothing going to be. That alone can destroy so many things, as we just found out in Egypt during the Exodus story. When these big events, cataclysmic events, happen, I mean, the world turned upside down.
But also, if you look at the timing of the, seven prophetic years of the years of the tribulation,
right,
and you look at the midpoint of the tribulation when we're told that Apophis is going to strike
3.5 years, right?
It happens to be.
It's going to get ugly, people.
Friday the 13th, 2029. That's the day that it's arriving. What? And that it's called by the same name.
How much do you need? To trust Yahweh. I mean, if you need more than that, then don't bother. Yahweh would just say.
Oh well, we were discussing about me being older, just some gray hairs and things like that, and I said, well, I'm not going to be 70. She says, oh, when you're 70 years old, this will happen, and I said, no, I'm not going to make it to 70. I'm telling you now. And when you tell people dates, specifics, how you got there, why it is, what is said, they look at you like you're a goddamn lunatic.
Yeah.
And they're the insane ones. They cannot hear.
Yeah.
They cannot see. They cannot. They're lame. They can't think.
Right. The evidence for these things, and just the affirmations, like in 33 CE, the Shabbat of matzah, on the most important matzah in human history, fell on a natural Shabbat, and how the Shabbat of Sukkah, which is the 1,000-year celebration of Sukkah, just happens to fall on a natural Shabbat, and how in Yisrael, and how in Yisrael there'll be the blood moon on that day and on Pesach in 33.
Why is it people can accept Daniel?
Evidence and reason. Yeah. Evidence and reason. Match it to Yahweh's words, and that is reality. If you have anything else, then you're blind.
How do you deal with Daniel, where Daniel goes through the history of humanity? From the fall of Babylon to the rise and fall of Persia to the rise and fall of the Greek Empire to the rise and fall of the Romans to the rise and ultimate fall of Roman Catholicism.
Yeah, the beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know how many Yahud today are secular humanists or agnostic?
Yeah, about 70%.
Yeah,
how can this be?
Yeah, somewhere between 20 and 25% are religious.
Evidence.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah.
The worst.
Yeah. But all of this is so easily discernible. The creation story, the story of the flood, the story of the Exodus, as you have pointed out, Kirk. It's the story of Dode. It's all so easily discernible, so credible. It is amazing that our credibility is assaulted when you realize that we have.
How about this?
So
Craig,
much
I can go so far as to point out from Egypt to where we passed the Jordan 7 sevens along the way, and show you such intricate patterns that the mathematical possibility is just astronomical.
Yeah, I
could probably sit down to Einstein himself and explain it, and he would shut his ears.
Yeah. Well, what were the likelihood that Yahweh's 6 days of creation would match relativity perfectly, and that we would have absolute proof that 6 24-hour days was the equivalent of the 14 billion years that the universe has existed?
From his perspective, of course.
Right, of course.
You have to understand life.
Provable mathematically.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, when you run just the 25 most interesting prophecies about Yosha and his timing, through probability, you get them to 10 to the 53 third power for chance fulfillment. There aren't that many fundamental particles in the entire universe. You know, the faith that it takes to think that life was conceived spontaneously out of compounds. You know, they want to talk about carbon being an organic compound. Carbon's not alive. I mean, you ever tried to see if you put a diamond or a piece of graphite down on a table or some? Can it do anything?
Okay, here's a real impossibility. Plants, you know, they actually communicate chemically, and they have autonomic nervous systems. They're actually more evolved than we think that they are. They have like a few 20,000 more genetic than we do. They've tried to say it's because they've been here longer. No, that's not it. Yes, they have. They were created before we were. But it does not prove evolution. It proves Yahweh's word.
Clearly, plants, we know, emerged from the sea, and that they were conceived prior to animal life. And Yahweh has that as the order of things. And the atheist would say, well, the order is interrupted by the creation of the sun and the moon, and of course that's impossible. And you'd say, that's not what it says.
It doesn't say that at all.
No, it says they would become
how would plants
visible
produce chlorophyll without the sun?
They would say that it became visible as sun. So what happened?
Magical wands, secular humanists and evolutionary people hold up and say, this is my magic.
What happened on the earth to make that transition for the sun to be seen? What did?
Yeah,
a lot of it happened to be the effect of plants consuming carbon dioxide and putting out oxygen. But the biggest issue was that the number of volcanoes and the number of asteroid and comet hits diminished to the point, where our atmosphere went from being opaque to translucent. The sun could be seen, and until you make that transition, until you have oxygen, which is really a fuel. It's the catalyst for energy based. Without oxygen, you don't have animals, and so Yahweh was not just telling us the order of events, but the reason they told us that the greater and lesser light would be seen as a sign for the Moed was he was trying to tell us what's going to happen on the fourth day, 4,000 years after Adam and Chawah were booted from the garden.
Now, I love science, but when it goes so far as to wave a magic freaking wand to prove their damned Darwin theory.
Yeah, but that's not science. That's scientism where you have a religion.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's true.
Two different animals.
Yeah, and you know what they find? What's just so amazing about this, about them, is that every scientist in the world that is a geneticist starts spontaneously on Earth. They all know it. They all know that it's an impossibility. So they've come up with this new deal that it was created someplace else, and that life somehow came in on a rock, on a meteor or a comet, and it came to us that way. Okay, so You're going to tell me that
oh wait, no, we have multiverses
too. Life was created on. Now we know it wasn't created on another planet in our solar system. We know it wasn't created in the asteroid belt. So you're telling me that this comet or asteroid came from another solar system? And that
hey, wait, Craig,
it just so happened to travel the Earth in such a way that it wasn't burned up on entry?
Yeah. Isn't most scientific research paid for by the government?
Almost perfect zero of space to get here, survive the insanely hot temperature of entering the atmosphere.
Correct.
Yeah, sure.
Which is like plasma.
It was in space for thousands and millions of years to get here.
Plasma, right.
Yeah, so where do these scientists get their funding if they're not working with reality? From the government?
It's
a million places.
Talk about man-made global warming, get it?
Yeah. That's exactly right. And what happens if you speak out against it? You're called a climate denier.
Oh, I've been called worse in my own home. Trust me.
A climate denier.
You know what else
I'm a climate denier. I'm a racist. I'm a lot of things.
Yes,
you know
I'm
what
a
you
climate
also
denier.
did today?
There is no climate on this planet. We don't have a climate. It's made up.
Oh, and racist.
They're the same people that are trying to convince you that the Earth is round.
By the way, we talked
or
about
if you're Muslim,
before,
it's
and I think it's important to say is that there's a reason that they moved away from global warming to climate change. Climate is changing. Climate has changed ever since the Earth has existed. It has changed. It will continue to change. It's always going through.
Wait a minute.
changes.
Didn't Yahowah say that he was going to dry up the rivers in Egypt?
Oh yeah, of course.
If you haven't been following, that's happening. Check it off your Torah list of prophecy.
Well, you know,
the lakes in Iran
they took pictures from space of the desert, the Sinai desert. I mean, not the Sinai desert, the Sahara desert, and you can see the riverbeds that once were there.
Yeah, the rivers that were there, right?
The lakes in Iran are drying up.
This ain't news.
Everywhere Islam goes,
it
turns into they're like locusts. They eat everything living. Even the water it stops raining. And Yahweh says, "Who is it that brings the rain?" He does. He brings the rain.
Yeah, that's I personally I think that is that's a metaphor. I do not think that Yahweh has any role in causing it to rain or not to rain. I don't see him in any way, shape, or form that kind of a micromanager. He set up the system.
But in the last days, he says, "I will dry up the rivers of Egypt, and I will dry up certain areas of my people will walk through."
Even there, I think what he is saying is that Earth is devolving. The human genome is devolving. We're polluting the planet, and he talks about increased in earthquakes and tsunamis and the asteroid that's going to hit. There are going to be so many cataclysmic things that are going to cause that to happen. And so Yahweh is telling us this is what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's just face it. He told us the Earth is this cannot go on forever. It's got to end. You'll get a new Earth.
The sun is going to.
You'll get a better place.
People.
Only for the few who want it.
Yeah, that it's the Earth. The sun is going to scorch people. No, I think that could likely be because of the reversal of the Earth pole.
Nuclear winter.
Nuclear. I don't think that Yahweh doesn't play the role of rain god. He doesn't say, I think I want to make it rain today, and I'm not going to, no. But he's telling us this is what we should expect during the last days. This is what he is going to do, that what's going to happen so that when it happens, we'll know it. And is it possible that when Yahweh created the system that became the universe, that he calculated in such a way that at the end of 6,000 years, that there would be these 6,000 years after Adam and Chawah moved out of the garden, or pushed out of the garden, that there would be these kinds of events occurring. Yeah, he could have put it into the equation.
Yeah, he told us in those days, the queen of the south, Yemen, would be look what's happening now. Check that off your Torah prophecy. It's happened. Have you seen what's going on in Yemen?
Well, the Saudis are using American weapons to bomb them into oblivion.
Starve them.
No.
They're starving.
Let me ask you all a question about end time.
Yeah, go ahead, Kirk.
Well, I've been talking a lot with Scott and Dr. Jeff and various people, and we all talk about the Nesama and how quick most of us took to it the minute we had a gap, one or two gaps filled in that we didn't know before, and all of a sudden all the pieces fell in. We just said, okay, that's okay. I know where the path is now. Go down the path. And most people just jump at it, and obviously we can talk to you blue in the face, and other people don't. These people, these Yehudim and Israelites that do not choose to do so prior to the harvest. What is going on in their brain that all of a sudden they finally get it?
Yeah,
well, they have to be pressed like a grape.
Well, they have to be pressed.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, I think what happens is that the Magog War becomes so devastating that they're being raped, they're being pillaged, they're more of them flooding into Israel, and they're just revolting. They're murderous, they're scumbags, they're immoral, they're just filthy, loud
Muslims. They're just like Muhammad.
Yeah, Muslims, and they're going to be coming into Israel faster than there are bullets to stop them, and then the whole world is going to turn against them, and it's just going to become total and complete desperation. The IDF couldn't protect them. Their politicians couldn't protect them. America abandoned them. The entire world is against them.
And their princes will fail them.
Right. There is no hope. And finally, at the end, they realize, wait a minute, God told us all this was going to happen. So I just think it's a combination of all those things. Yeah, I think that
it's a duh moment, not an aha.
I just wondered because when Hitler was pursuing them,
here's your answer.
They didn't turn into true Yehudim then. I mean, they still clung to their ways. So, boy, it must. Wow.
Yeah.
I believe
he tells you why.
I kind of assumed the same thing. Wow.
Yeah, they did not turn to Yahowah when Hitler was pursuing them. Now, so there is something that is different.
Well, they could go somewhere then.
Well, the thing that is
we put them on trial in Auschwitz.
The thing that is different is that when Hitler was pursuing them, was there a covenant family sharing what Yahweh had to say about end times?
No.
I think
they were formulating how to be Ashkenazi Jew.
Yahweh made it clear that most of what he said here about the last days would not be understood until the last days, and he made it quite clear that he looked for thousands of years to find one person with whom he could communicate. He couldn't. The reason that it was so important to me that we do not pursue, we do not promote.
I agree with you 100%.
False
Stick
news
with the script, man.
Is that the role that we're playing, even if it's for a few thousand Gentiles and some random Yehudim, even if it's just for a few thousand Gentiles and Yehudim that we are directly involved with, ultimately, we're the only conduit at this point that Yahweh is using to convey the truth to his chosen.
Wow.
What we're doing here
but the world beasts were a cult.
That's right. But but there is a time when things get bad enough in Israel, it'll be the only thing that they've got. The religious leaders turned out to be scumbags and scallywags. This is all they're going to have is Yahweh. And I hope there's somebody doing a better job of telling them how to respond to them than we are. But if there isn't, we're a whole lot better than anything that has existed
could not
previously.
get to them.
And there is nothing like what we have done that existed during the Holocaust.
No, that's true.
Nothing.
Totally
I think it is the significant difference. I think it's why it's so important that we stick to those things that are directly attributable to Yahweh and his story, which means we do have to talk about Islam because it plays such a huge role. We do have to talk about Christianity because it plays such a huge role in what Yahweh has to say. We've got to talk about militarism. We've got to talk about the myth of global warming and of the myths of macroevolution because it plays such a huge role. We have to talk about political correctness. There are things we have to talk about, but we ought to be careful, really, how far we go. It's why I was so critical of Alex Jones when I was on GCN and the myths that he would promote. And it finally got to the point where he stopped most of his controversial conspiracies. He stopped talking about
it's probably because it just didn't play to his audience anymore. But thank goodness at least it got away from that.
And the one that he was the second biggest advocate of, which was this Comet Ping Pong or whatever they called it, the pizza joint and the sex ring that was coordinated out of it, he wouldn't apologize to him. Went on the air and apologized to him and said, I was wrong. Yeah. He was wrong.
Let me ask you something about 9/11. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Go ahead. No, I'm fine. Go ahead.
Well, I want to ask you about 9/11. When we're talking about this, I know the history of it, the way you tell it, is right.
Mm-hmm.
However, if the government knew, what always confused me, if the U.S. government really knew about the 9/11 plot, did they ignore it or did they allow it to happen?
When you use the term the U.S. government knew,
that
makes some assumptions that the president knew, that the generals knew, that the Joint Chiefs knew, that it was genuinely known that this was going to happen, and they just know. Here's what.
I don't think it was genuinely known.
Listen, it was known that Ramzi Youssef was the mastermind behind the scheme to use liquids. That's why we can't take liquids on an airplane. And to use those liquids to create a bomb, and he tested it on a flight to Japan, killed one person. It was the plan to do that, and execution was on his computer. On his same computer was the plan that he conceived, that he promulgated in his relationship with Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines, to have Muslims go to U.S. flight schools and to learn not to take off an airplane, not to learn how to land an airplane, but to hijack an airplane and to fly those airplanes to specifically into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, the U.S. Capitol. He listed the targets. He talked about how these airplanes would be used. So the whole plan was on his computer. And the very same guy was later responsible for and actually convicted for the first bombing of the World Trade Center, where he had the petroleum bombs.
In the vans down below.
In the van. And when he was taken away from it and he was given a chance to look at it, said, "See, you failed, they still stand." And he said, "Not for long." So he's the one that came up with the plan. The U.S. government had access to that. The Philippine government shared that data in the computer with the United States. And so the United States knew where all of that had come from, that it was Abu Sayyaf and that it was Ramzi Youssef, who they knew was a credible Islamic jihadist because they'd already convicted him of the first bombing of the World Trade Center. So we had that information. But this is the problem. We have access to so much information. That's part of the problem we have with spying. America has a network of eavesdropping on everybody in the world, and when you gather too much information. None of the information is useful.
You're overwhelmed.
Right. So did the U.S. government someplace have that information? Yes. Did they? Was it understood and prominent in a place where it was useful? No. And what's sad,
do you think it would be even understood that if you studied Muslim culture or the culture of the Middle East and what Islam has done to people, that you don't go and invade a country like Iraq? You're going to create intergenerational bloodshed.
No. As soon as I studied Islam, I recognized that Bush's invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq was going to be suicidal. I mean, like I wrote at the time, it was going to be the single greatest mistake America ever made. Because you
and I were in agreement way back then, because the minute those buildings came down, I said, this is going to get very ugly.
Oh, yeah. That's why I tried desperately to get to George W. Bush immediately after it happened, and came very close to pulling that off. And then he declared war on al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and the result is the mess we see the world in today. Yeah.
Let me tell you something about
counterproductive use of the military.
What was the target in Afghanistan they wanted so bad?
Oh, they thought that
they just wanted something to say
Osama bin Laden was part of the American effort to destroy the Russian-backed government, and that he had moved to Afghanistan, and that he was certainly aware that 9/11 was going to happen. He wasn't responsible for 9/11, but he was certainly aware that it was going to be happen, and certainly celebrated it. That he was it was easier to pin it on him than it was on Islam. So they decided, we'll just make him the target, and so we sacrificed tens of thousands of American lives and hundreds of thousands of American bodies, and actually hundreds of thousands of American lives if you look at post-traumatic stress syndrome and suicide that war caused. We've actually probably of 250,000 American lives. And then an equal number of American bodies just completely mutilated by that war, and 1 million civilians, all to hunt down and kill one person who knew about it, but wasn't actually the responsible party. And even if they were the responsible party, it's like World War II in the Pacific. You know, the Japanese killed 3,000 American servicemen. Because we were stupid. They killed 3,000 American servicemen. So we go sacrifice
300,000.
Hundreds of thousands of American servicemen to avenge that. We kill hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians to avenge the killing of our servicemen. I mean, there is no set of circumstances where that's a moral, rational, reasonable thing to do.
Retaliation. No.
Yeah, it's just stupid. And people say, well, you've got to do something. Well, there are a lot of things you can do other than sacrificing that many lives in retaliation.
Yeah.
And just because you have to do something doesn't mean that doing the wrong thing is sensible.
No. Well, they could have bombed the Emperor's palace just for the hell of it. Could have gotten there.
War is only good for one economy, and that's the military-industrial complex.
You know,
and
back in the
1800s,
the world came up with the international law regarding warfare, and very clear denunciation. It is illegal to target civilians, and civilians are very clearly defined. And what the United States did in the Civil War was to target civilians. What the United States did in World War I and World War II was to target civilians. If that was our go-to, did that mean that we only target civilians? Of course not. There's a lot of World War II that was military to military. But that's not how the war was won.
No, we wiped out Germany
by targeting. The Civil War wasn't won by armies battling armies. It was won by targeting.
They wiped out all the growing fields, all the cities, everything. You had nothing.
Yeah, the Assyrians were much like that.
We did the same thing to the Indians. Kill off all the buffalo. They starve them.
Right. Exactly. Move them off their land. They can't grow crops anymore.
Yeah. No, put them someplace.
And then kill the buffalo, and
And they give them typhoid-infected towels or blankets. God, what a...
Right. Terror. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Well, and you look at the prosecution of the war in Iraq and Syria, and we're saying collateral damage is part of war, and it's this proportional calculation like what we did in Mosul. No matter what happens in Mosul, what we did will be counterproductive because we killed hundreds of civilians.
Sure.
Now, might we also have killed 100 Islamic State fighters? Yeah, probably. Did the Islamic State fighters try to use the civilians as a defense shield? Probably. Doesn't change the fact that what we did was counterproductive. It'll work against us.
And where is it
like
in
Vietnam? You could drop napalm and Agent Orange and bomb the Viet Cong all day long, and as you maimed and killed civilians,
they just turned more enemies.
Made more enemies than you killed. Yeah, we are really stupid. What we do is counterproductive. Well, my guess is Larry's mad at me for being so aggressive on.
Well, I'll tell you what you did right. I'll tell you what you did right, and the simple fact of the matter, if we're going to take this serious about doing what Yahweh wants us to do, because I encountered something, I had something that I really thought, boy, that's really true, and I shut my mouth off to some of my students, and one of them came back and said, well, now wait a minute, you obviously. This says here's the counter to that, and so far what I've read is absolutely, and I got to go apologize to that woman next time she comes to class and say you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. That is dumb.
Yeah, it's dumb.
If you ain't positive,
and part of it is I don't have a problem if you put your neck out and you've done your research and you say, this is important, I know it's not popular, but it sheds some light and some understanding on something that's important to know about Yahweh. Mm-hmm. But if you squander your credibility on something that somehow discredits a politician or general, that's not smart. It's not
well,
smart.
you may be right
you gain nothing.
If you're taking the mafia, you just in this, and you say this guy's a scumbag and that guy's a scumbag, and and then you itemize it to what end. And once you know they're all evil, then attack them as an evil, like you would attack the Ku Klux Klan, like you attack Islam. Right. I mean, it's okay to point out a few things about whomever, but I don't think you gain much.
Great example.
That's just my opinion, but
Petraeus was obviously a womanizer. And we know from the records that Petraeus had real problems.
Well, name a general who wasn't.
Yeah, okay, probably. But anyway, he was a womanizer, and he did some things that were really stupid.
Yeah.
I am not opposed to Petraeus because of the reports of his inappropriate sexual liaisons.
Yeah.
I'm opposed to him because he's the idiot that came up with the awakening program that created the Islamic State.
Yeah, let's arm both sides.
Yes, and so and the fact that no one has taken responsibility, and that Petraeus' plan only went into effect because the Bush administration accepted it.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Wait a minute, are you giving him a dunk pass?
Is an absolute scallywag. But the thing that bothers me the most about George Bush, Condoleezza Rice, and their ilk is they came up with the idea that it would be okay for America to torture people. That is
so are you clowning
what they did, and no one wants to hold them accountable. They're not in jail for doing that.
Yeah, they're untouchable in this life.
Yeah, they should be in jail. Yeah. They should all be in jail. They're proud of what they have done, and that there's nothing that they could have done that would have lowered the perceived morality of America, and most Americans don't care. Just don't care.
That's even bigger news than the other. It's bad enough they did it. It's that nobody cares.
No. The worst part about it is that they'll wave flags and do.
Condoleezza Rice is considered America's sweetheart. I mean,
and say God bless America and the military.
Crying out loud. She's a member of the NCAA's football bowl selection committee. Faraday on his show just did a Kiss Condoleezza Rice episode. She was part of the group that did that.
She's a disgusting human being.
Oh, of course. We don't even know. That's our problem again. We don't know what to hate. We don't know what to love or what to hate. And when it's appropriate to be critical.
What does Yahweh call America? How does he refer to it in the description in Yeshaya 18?
It's a lot of things, but he calls us arrogant. He calls us belligerent. He calls us a naval and air power that is drugged. We're trying to control the world. All those kinds of terms.
Yeah. But he gives her one particular label. And if you just take this into account and know that all of the people that run the state, the religion, and the state religion, and that goes for any government program, academia, not all of it can be trusted. The the press, nothing is true anymore, and evil is good, and good is evil.
Yeah, well, the whole concept of political correctness is to promote that which is untrue.
Evil. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the edicts, the demands of political correctness is to promote that which is untrue. To be completely counterproductive. For example, if you were to say that no, Black Lives Matter is a wrong mindset. And it's a wrong mindset because 90% of blacks who are killed by fellow blacks, and that if a black and white individual are in a confrontation and one kills the other, 8 times out of 10 it's the black killing the white, not the white killing the black. And those are facts. And so if you want to promote this idea that Black Lives Matter and all lives matter, then rather than making it a racist issue against white, you ought to say what's wrong in the black community. They were killing one another.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk about police brutality and the police are, don't go to the point that the police are racist. Go to the point that the police are over-militarized. Go to the point that the police are
military.
That their attitude is way too aggressive. Right.
Yeah.
Well, their attitude is military.
I think we just got to be careful on where we want to pick our battles and which, and make sure we're on target.
We want to make sure that we pick our battles such that our controversies are all to reinforce Yahweh's testimony and to help people understand why those that oppose Yahweh, who are offering a alternative to trusting and relying on Yahweh, are not credible.
Well,
I don't have a problem saying that the U.S. military is a place where sexual perversity is rampant, because we know that for fact. It's prevalent, as easy to verify. And I don't have an issue, but I do have an issue of saying that a politician is a sexual pervert. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The fact that there's sexual abuse taking place in the U.S. military, and that it's allowed because they have their own legal system and they abuse the victim, that's appropriate to get out. The fact that universities that are so politically correct and are supposed to be fighting for the rights of women in particular have created an environment that's second only to the military in terms of propensity of women to be abused. That's important to know. But the fact that a professor or a dean of a particular university was caught in being adulterous, that's not relevant.
Yeah.
Do you hear what one of the trustees said about Penn State today?
It was something I wasn't sure. I read a little bit of the headline, but it was something about.
Yeah, stunning. He was talking about.
Had no sympathy for the victim, or.
Yeah, he said, I don't care about all these 35-year-old, alleged victims at Penn State when it's all a bunch of political correct hooey that were attacking people like the former president of Penn State, and making such a big deal of these alleged 35-year-old victims. You had a former football coach abuse a score of children in your football facilities, and it's known by your existing football staff, and they do nothing about it, and it's reported all the way up to the chancellor of the university, and they do nothing about it. And you say they don't have a fiduciary duty?
Yeah.
You don't care about the victims? Wow.
Fiduciary duty in America anymore? That's so 1980s. What are you talking about?
Yeah, the law, fiduciary duty. Yeah, fiduciary duty.
Yeah. It's broken every day.
Yeah, it is.
Greg, before you go home, or before you hang up, next week when we do the observation show, there's a few little things and some question stuff that I'd like to do with you in the early part of it if we can.
Great. Sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
How far did you guys get through the...
Well, we got to... the trouble is it's kind of dry because I read a lot of material about all the Arab historians and so forth, just proving that we're into the Amalekites. There is no Pharaoh, an Egyptian Pharaoh running the show. It's all Amalekites, and we got all the way in a quick run through of all the way down to Dode by the time he wipes out the last vestige of the Amalekites. But it kind of left it there where we ran out of time, so I really couldn't wrap it all up and review and say, okay, now this is what we learned, and this is what's there, and there's the proof. Every source you think of, this must be 9 different avenues you can go to prove the story is accurate and the Torah from Moshe leaving all the way up to Dode and even up to Solomon taking over. And then if we can kind of tiny little review and then
boy, and look what happened after that. I mean, everything just fell apart, didn't it? Yeah. Only 2 United Kings of Yisrael. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm. That was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
2 of them.
Well, the trouble I had was, and I think I may have talked off the air with Scott, is that how disappointed, if you read it, how disappointed you are in Solomon. You have these 2. Once they got rid of the Amalekites' control, then you have a flourishing empire grows in Egypt, and a flourishing empire grows in Israel. So you have these 2 great powers actually become out of this, and then Solomon marries everybody or has unions with everybody and takes them as wife, and he brings everything pagan back. He may not have put it in the temple, but he puts it all in his house where all his wives are pagans or can worship their gods there and stuff. It's well, are you insane? And that's why it's God's house.
You look at, you just read Solomon's the Song of Solomon, or read the Ecclesiastes. I mean, it's just the man was not a net positive.
No, that's why.
I mean, if I never ever bump into Solomon, that'd be just fine with me.
Okay with us.
Yeah, man.
I'm not a big fan of Shlomo.
Then you get to Jeroboam, and it's just like over, and then they haul off everything. Yeah, Yahweh's view of Solomon is what I will ultimately adopt. Mm-hmm. But on this side of Yahweh's influence, it's hard to figure out.
I am not a fan. I am not a fan. I am a huge fan of Dode, even though Dode made some really, really dumb decisions.
Yeah.
But
he made one decision that everybody has to make, because
you gotta love Dode.
You want to be upright. You got to go down the one path that Yah said go down that path, and he never failed to go down that path.
That's right.
And that's the one thing we can all cling to.
Yeah, he made a lot of mistakes later in life. I mean, that particularly when he made that terrible mistake to go send a bunch of people to get water from a particular spring and risk their lives, and then tossed it out.
You don't even drink it.
So because of what you've done here, these are going to be. Pick one of the. I'm going to give you the choice. Pick one of these three as the consequence. And of course, it was such an easy option for him to pick, and yet he picked one that caused 70,000 people to die, just because he didn't want to have to
deal with the hassle of his consequence.
Oh wait, what was the date that Rome sacked Israel?
135.
Well, there's two times. One in 70 CE, and the other one in 133 to 135.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm not Einstein with math, but that's pretty important little. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, 70 CE, I don't think. I mean, even though there's a 7 in it, it doesn't mean anything because it's on a pagan calendar. But the reason 133 is important is that the only reason that Rabbi Akiva could credibly pull off the myth that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah was because it was a Yobel year, and it was not just a Yobel year; it was a Yobel year within the framework of what they knew to be 6 plus 1, and they knew that year 4000 is when. I mean, it was just you read the Torah; it's obvious that the year 4000 Yah is when the Messiah is going to show up. And so it was the Yobel year within 100, within reasonable time of year 6000 Yah, which is why they.
So how long do you think they got together and planned all this? Put their little brains.
Yeah. By the way,
the
rabbinic calendar is off by about that same amount of time. So from their point of view, the rabbinical point of view, 133 was right on time.
Yeah. Because
they're off in their timeline because of the Babylonian texts and how they differ. So anyway.
Oh well.
Oops.
Let's keep on keeping on. And
boy, that didn't work out very well for them, did it?
No.
No, Yahweh says, I think it's in one of the Mashal or Mizmor, I'm not sure. I'll have to figure out a Torah address for it. But he says, if I tell you it's day, you'll say it's night. We're so bad.
One quick thing,
for those that are listening to the longer recording, is be really careful on promoting, on sharing, on accepting a false news or a conspiracy theory. Be really, really.
Well, then you do that about what Yahweh says. Don't go with these conspiracies. It's just a wise thing to be.
Just don't do it, and it's because it destroys your credibility. And if you're risking your credibility over something that is essential, like criticizing that God's name cannot be pronounced, that we can know when He's going to return. No problem. That's an appropriate place to risk your credibility because you know for certain that what Yahweh is saying is true. Therefore, you're it needs to be said, and you know you're right. But when we're promoting some of these stories that are popping up, and they're so prolific today on false news, there's nothing to be gained, and there's so much to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And
one last little thing.
And why would you want to spend all that time at your computer?
Right, and looking up these. Yeah, looking up. Why would you spend 5 hours, 10 hours, or 15 hours trying to verify a story that is irrelevant?
Mm-hmm.
Just irrelevant.
Yeah.
Does it matter that Bill Clinton is a sexual pervert? No. It doesn't.
No, well,
is he a sexual pervert? Yes.
Is he a politician? Yes.
That's his private life. His public Laodicea and his policies.
Right. You want to criticize Bill Clinton, criticize him over the fortune that he amassed after he became president. Think of the bribes, the quid pro quos that put him in the position to build that kind of wealth when he was broke. And then think about how that applies to what Obama is now doing, what George Bush did. Think of how it applies to American politicians and the money they amass as a result of
criminal. They're all criminals.
It's criminal. It's criminal. But focus on that. That's the stuff that matters. The other stuff, it's just not.
What people do in their bedrooms is their business.
Yeah.
I got some feedback
what's in their bodies is their own free choice. What they choose for sexuality. Look, if a gay is if someone is actually going beyond the words, they'll step between.
Yeah.
You don't need to kill each other over an idea.
Yeah. There are some sexual perversity that are really important. I mean, with fundamentalist
Muslims, I thought what you did on the church was important.
To little girls, that's really bad. What the Roman Catholic Church does, that is really bad. What Bachi Ba in Afghanistan with the little boys, really, really
horrendous.
bad. Needs to be exposed. And the sex trade,
and what the rabbis do
is a huge problem in this world, and a highly disproportionate number of women who are kidnapped and sold into sexual slavery are going to Islamic countries where they can never get out of the royal family's home. And it's very pervasive, and there are hundreds of thousands of women who have been sold into sexual slavery. And that's important. That's an important story to tell.
Particularly from Eastern Bloc countries.
Mm-hmm. Yes, from Eastern Bloc countries but throughout the world, into the Islamic world. Now, there's other places.
And here in the Caribbean, it's Dominican Republic who is the sex slaver of this region.
Yeah.
Lisa, where are you?
I'm in the other Dominica.
Never mind.
Yeah.
You don't have to say.
Dominican Republic.